All right, welcome into Conscious Conversations. Today we have the very special pleasure of introducing one of my close personal friends, Dr. Cyrus Khambatta. Cyrus, what's going on?
What's up? How you doing, Nick? It's great to be with you and Nitin today. I'm super excited for the conversation that we're going to have.
Absolutely. Nathan and I are very excited as well. So Cyrus is a PhD, is a New York Times best-selling author and the co-author of Mastering Diabetes, which has helped more than 10,000 people reverse the underlying issues and causes of insulin resistance. He's a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Stanford, as well as a PhD in nutritional biochemistry from the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears. That's a mouthful, man. That's a lot to introduce you.
Go Bears. That's all that matters.
Go Bears. Cyrus, why don't you take a couple minutes, go ahead, kind of introduce yourself, tell us who you are, how you've gotten to this place and this space of being an absolute expert in the field of bionutrition and diabetes specifically, and nutrition. And after that, I might run us through a little visioning practice of kind of seeing where we are right now with our health and where we want to be with our health. And you and Nathan and I will kind of work through how our listeners can make those changes. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. So give you a quick background here. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and 2 other autoimmune conditions in the year 2002. So I was a senior at Stanford University. I was graduating with a degree in mechanical engineering. And I just kind of I had senioritis. I was just like done and trying to like move on with my life so that I could do something different. Right. So at that time, I got 3 diagnoses within 6 months. The first one was Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, which is low thyroid hormone output as a result of an autoimmune condition. Number 2, I got diagnosed with alopecia universalis, which is just a fancy way of saying, by the way, you're going to lose all your hair. So I actually had these little like patches. I used to have hair, and then I ended up shaving it. So I had just kind of like a number 1, AstroTurf cut, if you will. And then at that time, I ended up with bald spots like on my hairline and then in the back of my head. And then before I knew it, I had bald spot patches that were appearing on my chest hair and then on my beard. And before I knew it, I was like, uh-oh, my hair's doing something crazy. Went to the doctor and they were like, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to lose all your hair in a very short period of time. And I was like, cool, sweet, add that to the list. And then number 3, type 1 diabetes set in. All 3 of these happened within a 6-month window. And the reason I figured out that I was living with type 1 diabetes is because I was trying to study for finals one day. And I just recognized that I was like, man, it is hard to concentrate. What is happening? And by the way, I am very thirsty. So I would drink a glass of water, I would put it back down, and then I would try and do these like, mechanical engineering equations. And I was like, whoa, like, what's going on? Like, this is not easy. I would get thirstier and then I would drink another glass of water, put it down, and then I would get thirstier and I would drink another glass. And this kept on going on for hours. And so I picked up the phone and I called my sister, who's a doctor of osteopathy. And I was like, hey, Shanaz, quick question for you. What the heck is happening to me right now? And so I explained the thirst. I explained the lack of being able to concentrate. And I explained that I would also would go to the bathroom every 30 minutes, like clockwork, just urinating like never before. Then the icing on the cake was that when I would go to sleep, I would cramp up. You get one of those, you guys have probably felt that before, where you get like a hamstring cramp in the middle of the night and you're like, oh God, no. And you would like, try and get rid of it before it got super tight. So that would happen in my right leg. And then as I was like manipulating my body so that I could like stretch out my hamstring and have it not cramp, my left calf muscle would cramp. And then my abdomen would cramp. And then my shoulder would cramp simultaneously. So I was like literally lying in bed in full body rigor mortis being like, what is going on with me right now? This does not feel right. So long story short, I explained this to my sister. She said, Cyrus, drop everything that you're doing right now. Go straight to the health center. You're explaining the symptoms of type 1 diabetes. And I was like, type 1 diabetes? What are you talking about? I don't have diabetes. That's just for old people who eat cake. Come on now. And she was like, Cyrus, I don't have time to explain. Just go. So I showed up at the health center. They checked my blood glucose. It was 660. Right?
Wow.
Your normal blood glucose is supposed to be between about 70 and 130 any day. Any moment of the day. And I was 6x that. So they took me to the hospital. They administered an IV of saline into one arm to rehydrate me, and then an IV of an IV actually of insulin into the other arm, so that I could actually lower my blood glucose values to a normal physiological level. I was there for 24 hours. They discharged me, and they were like, "Oh, hey, by the way, now that you've been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, you also have hypothyroidism and you also have alopecia. It's confirmed you have 3 autoimmune conditions. Good luck with that. See you later." And I was
Enjoy
like,
your life.
"Yeah, give us a call if you need some help." And I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on a second. What the heck are you talking about?" Right. So they gave me a carbohydrate counting guide. They gave me two prescriptions for insulin. They gave me a blood glucose meter. They gave me a prescription for insulin syringes. And they just pumped me with a bunch of fear because they were like, "Listen, we've never seen these 3 autoimmune conditions before grouped together in one person. We don't really know what to tell you, but you could eat a low carbohydrate diet and that might help you control your blood glucose. And that might help you prevent your insulin use from increasing over the course of time." And I was like, "Okay, awesome. I'll do it, but I need more instruction." So basically over the course of the next 6 months or so, I started to work with my doctor and like a nutritionist that the doctor provided for me. And they were trying to teach me how to eat a low carbohydrate diet with like chicken and meat and fish and turkey burgers and olive oil and dairy products. And I was like, all right, I'm a 23-year-old dude at this point, 22-year-old boy. Great. You're telling me that I can eat more meat? Awesome. I'll do it. That sounds awesome because I love eating that food anyway. Sounds like a plan. But what I didn't realize was that over the course of the next year, my life was going to turn into a train wreck. And what happened was that my blood glucose was supposed to be controlled and my insulin use was supposed to be controlled. Neither one of those two promises happened. Instead, my blood glucose became a roller coaster. And on any given day, my glucose could be as low as a 40 or as high as a 400. And there was literally, the thing that drove me nuts was that there was no connection between the things that I was doing on a daily basis, AKA eating a low carbohydrate diet, exercising every single day, trying to remain low stress, not drinking alcohol, not smoking marijuana anymore. I was being a good boy and I was trying to do all of the things that were supposed to make my health better. But yet, despite the fact that I was doing all that stuff, my glucose was a roller coaster. And my insulin use went from like 25 units a day to 28 to 29 to 32 to 36 to 41 to 47. Before I knew it, there were certain days where I was injecting 55 units of insulin per day in order to eat only 100 grams of carbohydrate. And I was like, this is clearly not working. I don't get it. I don't know what the solution is, but I can tell you that what I'm doing right now is not working. Period. End of story. So that's when I ended up switching over to eating a plant-based diet in the year 2003. And, my life unfolded in ways that I could never predict. My insulin sensitivity went sky high. My ability to eat carbohydrate went through the roof. My insulin use came down. My glucose came down. My energy levels went up significantly. I was more hydrated. I could sleep better, no anxiety about my health. And I was like, damn, this is incredible. And then that's when I sort of started my plant-based journey. I went back to school to go get a PhD in nutritional biochemistry because I wanted to just understand like what was happening inside of this experimental text bed. I just wanted to understand myself. And in the process of doing that, I started to recognize that there was so much research that had been happening over the past 100 years that was like buried in the scientific literature about other people who had transitioned to a plant-based diet. And so there's experiment after experiment after experiment and paper after paper after paper describing what happens to people when they transition to a plant-based diet. And the research was very clear about the fact that this is a phenomenal tool that you can use to significantly improve, number one, your insulin sensitivity. Number two, reduce your A1C value, reduce your blood glucose, reduce your body weight, and extend your life. And when I started to read this, I was like, okay, this is powerful information. So, that's led me to who I am today. That's a long-winded way of me saying that eating a plant-based diet has fundamentally changed me from the inside out. And my goal is to try and educate as many people as I possibly can about how they can use this for diabetes and beyond.
There's such a stark contrast from what the doctor told you. And he was like, go eat more meat.
100%. go eat more meat, because, ultimately what I see in today's world is that the world of low carbohydrate nutrition has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of time. And, these low carbohydrate diets keep getting recycled. First, it was like the Atkins diet back in the 90s. And then there was a version of it, the zone diet, the South Beach diet, and then the paleo diet. And then now the keto diet, and now the carnivore diet. And it's like every 2 to 3 years, there's just like a new quote unquote diet. And then people jump on this bandwagon because they want to eat more meat. They're looking for a reason and a scientific backing to eat more meat. And what's crazy is that when you eat a meat-based diet, like Nick, you and I have talked about this 1,000 times before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, we can go into more detail about it, but like when you eat a diet that contains a significant amount of meat and you eliminate your carbohydrate intake, or you reduce your carbohydrate intake, there's a lot of really good things that happen. A lot of incredible things. Lower glucose, lower A1C, weight loss, rapid weight loss, improved digestion, lower blood pressure, and lower total cholesterol and triglycerides. Like, who doesn't want all that? That's incredible, right? But what people miss is that when they do it and they get those results in the short term, that those short-term results don't always translate to the same long-term effects. Mm-hmm. And the short term, they sacrifice the long term in order to get these results in the short term, and it can really become a metabolic liability down the road. And that's also backed by plenty of science.
I tell people all the time, my personal life and my fitness studio, I say, when it comes to listening to what's out there, right? I'm always like, find 1 or 2 people that you agree with and you like their stuff and follow them. Because, and I've used you as an example plenty of times, Cyrus. I'm like, you can provide all the research out there that shows that a plant-based diet will extend your life, right? And then we could get Mark Sisson on here, and he's going to be like, here's why a paleo diet is going to extend your life. And I think to a large extent, both of you guys are correct.
Correct.
Right? Like, there's data on both sides. So people are like, what the fuck? Like, how could a plant-based diet and a carnivore diet both be good for me? And I think there's some nuance in there of, one, what are the long-term effects of health? And 2, I think there's a lot of power in not using a diet, like picking a lifestyle. And Cyrus, you and I have talked about this, like picking a lifestyle or eating habits that work for you and that work with your body. Like I know, Cyrus, you're raw food, plant-based. Now, I don't think you teach all of your clients to be raw food. Am I correct? Like, you're probably teaching them more of a plant-based, right?
That's exactly right. So for full clarification, when I first transitioned to eating a plant-based diet, I chose to be a raw food eater because that's just what was presented to me at the time. And so I did that for 14 years and it felt great. I loved it. Lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, but no legumes and no whole grains at all. And then somewhere around the year 2016, 2017, I started eating more cooked food. And so now my diet is, it contains a significant amount of fruits and vegetables that are raw, and then also a significant amount of cooked food as well. But to answer your question, I've evolved my diet over the course of time by choice. And what we teach people is a couple of fundamental principles. Number 1, I'm not trying to turn you into a vegan. I do not care if you become a vegan or a 100% plant-based eater. That is not my goal. My goal is to teach you how to incorporate more plant-based foods into your diet, and you get to choose where you want to stop. You could have a little bit of plant, you could have some red meat in your diet. You can have some white meat in your diet. You can have some dairy in your diet. That is your choice. I'm just going to give you the knowledge and the tools to be able to make your own decision in an educated manner. And you're the one that gets to choose where to stop. Right. And then number 2, I'm not the food police. I'm not here making decisions for you when you sit down to eat lunch. That is your responsibility. Okay. I'm just going to provide you with the knowledge and the insight and the guidance and all the scientific backing for it. And then ultimately, this is your journey and you get to choose what you want to do.
That's so refreshing to hear, honestly. And I truly mean that. It's so refreshing to hear. It's like, here's the data. Here's what I'm teaching you. Here's the tools. And, Nathan, this is how you and I coach people on emotions or stress management. Here's the tool. And Cyrus, you and I have done this in some of the coaching work we've done together. It's like, here's the tool, Cyrus. Do you want to use it or not? Like, I actually kind of don't care. But and if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, well, then let's find something else. Cyrus put me on his raw food vegan diet years ago, and I almost died. I was like on the couch, doubled over in pain for 2 weeks because my body didn't have enough power to digest raw foods. And Cyrus was like, dude, you got to stop. This isn't going to work for you. This is adverse to your health. And it's like, it's just so refreshing to hear you say that you're not the police. You're not here to tell people how to eat, but you're here to teach people the tools that can help them transform their health and their wellness. And I just really commend that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But correct me if I'm wrong. You've also evolved your diet significantly over the past like year to 2 years, and are now eating more plant-based material than you have ever eaten in the past. Am I wrong?
My diet's probably 50% plant-based and probably 95% whole food.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And my weight's the lowest it's been in years, and I'm eating more carbohydrates than I have been in years. You had told me one time, years ago, you said, I try to take things from the earth to my mouth, and like the least amount of steps possible in between is the way to do it. And that really stuck with me. But yeah, my diet's probably half vegetarian, honestly, at this point. And then, the rest of it is predominantly whole foods. It's rare that I'm having something that's processed. Yeah.
Amazing. How about you, Nitin? How do you eat?
Mine is probably similar. In fact, I was, there's a lot of cooked food in my diet, but I definitely consciously introduce raw food as well in the form of, smoothies or salads, and so forth. But I've actually, for the last year, have started reintroducing different forms of meat or seafood into my diet. I was vegetarian for 5 years straight, and then realized like there were, I feel like there was like a part of my palate that was missing, and it was still present. But it's probably now it's no more than 10%. Like meat and seafood, I think is no more than 10% of my diet. Mostly it's whole grains, whole food, plant-based diet. And one question I had for you, Cyrus, because as we were talking about it, we started talking about sort of the paleo diet versus the plant-based diet and the short-term and the long-term effects. I'm actually really curious if we can unpack that for us a little bit. So what should people keep in mind as we think about these different approaches, and what are the short-term versus long-term impacts?
Okay. Very good question. So I think the most logical place to start is with the ketogenic diet. Okay. The ketogenic diet is basically a very low carbohydrate diet that is specifically designed to significantly reduce carbohydrate intake. Okay. And the reason it's called a ketogenic diet in the first place is because researchers as far back as the 1970s identified that when you eat a very low carbohydrate diet, there is still glucose in your blood. The glucose in your blood is required for life. And that glucose is required for tissues to be able to uptake that glucose and oxidize it and turn it into ATP. But when you eat a low carbohydrate diet, the concentration of glucose in your blood falls and it becomes very low, which is a good thing in general. But then there's a secondary fuel source that's created by your liver. And that secondary fuel source is called a ketone body, or there's actually a group of them. There's 3 ketone bodies that are referred to that are known as acetone, acetoacetate, and beta hydroxybutyric acid. So don't worry, this is not going to be on the exam, but there's basically 3 ketone bodies.
You lost me.
Our audience better be taking some scrupulous notes here.
Well, the purpose of these ketone bodies are basically to provide a fuel for your brain, because when your glucose concentration is limited, that means that your brain does not get a sufficient amount of energy. So your brain is basically saying, hey, listen, if there's not enough glucose, I need something else. Because if you don't provide me with what I'm looking for, then I'm going to have cognitive issues. And then that's going to lead to, confusion and slurred speech and beyond. So these are all the symptoms that you get when you're hypoglycemic. You guys might have felt that before. You go and you do a really hard workout, and you've been like sweating for a long time. Maybe you haven't been eating very much food, and all of a sudden you're like, your hands are shaky and you can't really think clearly. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry right now. Right. Those are all symptoms of your brain.
After a big hike.
Yeah. After a big hike. Exactly right. Those are all symptoms of your brain being in a low glucose environment. Okay. So we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. So what your liver does in this low carbohydrate environment is it says, okay, cool. I don't want you to be operating in a low glucose environment. I need to make another fuel. And that other fuel is going to basically be called these ketone bodies. And these ketone bodies I'm going to shuttle up to your brain. And this is going to be a backup fuel for your brain to be able to use those to oxidize for ATP. Good. Problem solved. Okay. So ketogenic diet was named because these ketone bodies go up in concentration when you eat a low carbohydrate diet. Okay. So people who eat a ketogenic diet basically are eating things like meat, eggs and dairy, oil, nuts and seeds. Okay. Then they have small amounts of green vegetables. And then they also have the only type of fruit that most ketogenic dieters are going to eat are things like berries because they're extremely low glycemic index. And they also have just a very small amount of carbohydrate intake or carbohydrate content. And the goal here is to get your total fat intake to somewhere around like 75 to 80% of all of your calories. Okay. And then your carbohydrate intake is going to be like 5% of your total diet, right? Usually somewhere around 30 grams per day. Okay, so it's a very small amount of carbohydrate. And then protein usually ranges somewhere between about 15 and 25%, depending on the person. All right. So we're talking about very high fat, very low carbohydrate with about, medium protein, 15 to 25%. Okay. So when people eat these diets, like the reason why the ketogenic diet became popular, in my opinion, is because as soon as you start eating a ketogenic diet, the most recognizable effect is weight loss. And it's not just weight loss, it's actually rapid weight loss. Okay. So people who eat a ketogenic diet, you see them on Google all the time, like on Google, on Instagram, on anywhere on social media. People are like, look at me before and look at me after. I used to be 260 pounds. I started eating a ketogenic diet and 3 months later, I'm now 190 pounds. I lost 70 pounds in 3 months or 70 pounds in 6 months. And I'm like, damn, that is fast, right? So rapid weight loss is the first.
Not sustainable.
Effect. Not even close to sustainable. We'll get there. Okay. So the very first effect is rapid weight loss. Now, when you lose weight, there are a lot of other powerful metabolic effects that come along for the ride. Powerful metabolic effects. Number one, fasting blood glucose comes down. Okay. So people who eat a ketogenic diet, who maybe started in an overweight manner, maybe they were pre-diabetic or had type 2 diabetes to begin with, they have a high fasting glucose, call it 165. They'll start eating a ketogenic diet. And before you know it, their fasting glucose goes from 165 down to 130, down to 83, which is exactly where you want it to be, somewhere between 70 and 100. And they're like, damn, that was cool. In addition to that, their A1C value, which is a 3-month marker of average blood glucose, that comes down. Maybe it started at 7, and then before they knew it, it came down to a 5.2%, which is exactly where you want it to be. Okay. So they see lower fasting glucose, lower A1C value. Then they take a look at their blood pressure and they go, holy crap, I lost 70 pounds and my blood pressure went from being, 150 over 120. And now it's all the way down to 120 over 80 or maybe 115 over 75, right? So great. That's another huge benefit. Okay. Number 4, their triglyceride value. Okay. That's one of the things that you measure in a lipid panel. Their triglyceride value might have gone from like 350 all the way down to 110. And they're like, damn, that's awesome as well. Right. So you see cardiovascular improvements, you see glucose improvements, and you see body weight improvements. But all of these improvements are secondary to weight loss. Okay. So in other words, if we were to construct a series of dominoes, the first domino in this chain would be the weight loss domino. And as soon as that weight loss domino is flipped, then boom, it sets into motion all the glucose changes. And then it also sets into motion all the cardiovascular changes. And that's a good thing. Okay. So now you have people who report back 6 months after starting a ketogenic diet. They've lost 60 pounds, 70 pounds. They're feeling great. Their blood work is in a significantly improved state. And their doctor gives them a high five and goes, hey, whatever you're doing, just keep doing more of it. That's awesome. Right. So let me ask you this. If you started eating this way and you guys got those effects, what would you think? Would you continue eating that way?
Yeah, initially you'd be like, oh, this is awesome. This is perfect. You get to eat all the stuff that tastes good. And, if eating all this fat and stuff really appeals to you and like, wow, I have all these positive health benefits.
So you would probably continue to do it, correct?
And I'm gonna tell people about it too. That's another piece for sure. Like, look at all these results. Look at the changes I'm having. Hey, mom, you should get on this. Hey, dad, you should get on this. Right? That I would totally see myself doing that as well. Like this is a magic pill almost, is what you're describing, Cyrus, to me sounds like a magic bullet.
It does. It does. It sounds like a magic bullet. And it feels like a magic bullet, right? And truth be told, it is a magic bullet at the very beginning, because you're like, what you're doing is you're actually kind of like reversing or erasing years and years and years of metabolic dysfunction that has accumulated over the course of, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of like, poor eating. And all of a sudden in a short period of time, you're like, whoa, I just got a new lease on life. That's pretty cool, right? So who doesn't want that? But what most people don't realize is that the effects that you get in the short term may not stick. They may end up reversing themselves over the course of time. And that's where things get a little bit confusing, because you would never predict that that's going to happen. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you get these awesome short-term results, then why wouldn't it stick into the long term? It doesn't make any sense. Like, this should continue, right? I should continue to remain, my body weight should continue to remain low, and my blood pressure should stay low, and my lipid panel should continue to be good. So like, get out of my way. Everything's fine. Don't tell me to do anything differently, right? But what ends up actually happening is that if you fast forward, anywhere from a year to 2 years to 5 years to 10 years, it sort of depends on the person, depends on their disease history, depends on their level of activity and beyond. You end up finding that the ketogenic approach can often lead to some pretty not so fun, effects down the road. And those effects can be, they can be many different things. Number one, first and foremost, oftentimes people will lose weight and then their weight will basically stop. It'll plateau. They'll hit some number. It could be their target ideal body weight, or it could be a little bit above that. And all of a sudden they're like, I hear this over and over again. People are like, I just can't lose weight anymore. It just stopped. Like, I just can't lose weight. It's like nothing will get these extra 20 pounds off of me. No matter what I do, I starve myself. I intermittent fast. I go to the gym. I do everything. It just won't come off of me. That's problem number one.
And I hear that same story every day at Tribe. Same story.
And is this from people who are eating a ketogenic diet, or just like in general, people are giving you that?
In general, they're lost. They're confused. They can't lose the weight. Their metabolisms aren't working. They're frustrated. They've got information from everywhere, and I just say it's simple.
Yep.
It's not complex. It's simple. You got to eat better, and you got to move better. But I hear what you're talking about here daily.
You hear it daily. Exactly right. So I'm not the only one that's seeing this.
No.
Exactly. Okay. So if weight loss plateaus, that's issue number one. Now, issue number two, the non-negotiable, as far as I'm concerned, in my head, is LDL cholesterol. Okay. LDL cholesterol is considered your bad cholesterol. The reason it's considered your bad cholesterol is because it's cholesterol that's put into an LDL particle. And the LDL particle basically carries two different things. It carries cholesterol, what are called cholesterol esters, and then it also contains triglyceride. And the purpose of an LDL particle is literally, it's manufactured by your liver as a VLDL particle. The VLDL particle goes and delivers cholesterol to tissues, delivers fatty acids to tissues, and then it turns from a VLDL into an LDL particle. And then the LDL particle continues to deliver cholesterol and deliver fatty acids to tissues. And then eventually it turns into an IDL, and then it gets basically recycled back to your liver. Okay. So the reason it's called a bad cholesterol is because it is literally a cholesterol delivery mechanism. It is an Amazon delivery truck. It's got a bunch of stuff in the back, right? And it shows up at a house and it's like, here you go. Why don't you take this package over here? Then it goes to the next one and it goes, here's another package for you, right? It's literally just delivering cholesterol wherever it can go, right? So if there's a high concentration of cholesterol, that means that each LDL particle is going to contain a lot of cholesterol, and there's going to be more LDL particles to begin with, right? Now, the reason why LDL matters is because there's a significant amount of data, and I'm talking a ridiculous amount of data, that demonstrates in over 1 million participants, 1 million study subjects across a number of studies, that LDL is the single most problematic lipoprotein. In other words, LDL, you really want to pay attention to your LDL concentrations and keep them in the normal range of between 70 and 100. And when your LDL concentration is elevated, it significantly elevates your risk for a future cardiac event. aka a heart attack. You don't want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that, right? So we have to, everybody should know their LDL number as much as they know their social security number or their telephone number. And when I go around and I ask people, I'm like, okay, cool. What's your A1C value? What's your fasting blood glucose? What's your LDL? Most people are like, I don't know. I don't know. It's good. It's good. It's a little high. And I'm like, not good enough. I need a number, because that number can determine so much about your cardiovascular metabolism and can really determine whether or not you're at risk for, a cardiac event, right? Long story short.
Just to interject.
Go.
Now I understand. I had sent my blood results to Cyrus about 2 years ago, and you looked at my cholesterol. And my doctor goes, "Your cholesterol is great. Your LDL is high, but your HDL is through the roof." And you were like, "Dude, time out. You need to make a major shift right now." I think my LDL was like 110 or 120, and you were like, "No way, not at all. This is a major issue." And I actually shifted to a fully vegetarian diet for 3 or 4 months as a result of you. But now I understand why you were so stern with me and saying, "Nick, you got to get this cleaned up. This is not good for your long-term health." So now it's just really painting a picture for me of why you were so passionate about me making that shift in my own health too.
Good. I'm glad. So what ended up happening? If you ate a vegetarian diet for a couple of months, did your LDL concentration fall?
Yeah, it dropped under 100. Yep.
It dropped under 100. Perfect.
Yep.
Great. Okay, that's exactly where you want to be. Nice work. Way to listen. I dig it.
Okay. Good coaches listen.
Okay, so again, LDL is very important. It's necessary to pay attention to that number. Now, across the board, no matter what scientific study you look at, any scientific study that measures the effect of eating a ketogenic diet specifically on LDL concentration, all of them report that LDL concentrations go up. And it makes a lot of sense, because when you eat red meat and white meat and fish and chicken and dairy products and eggs, those foods contain a significant amount of two things. Number one, saturated fat, and number two, cholesterol. Saturated fat is the thing that will raise your LDL cholesterol more than any other component of your food. Most people think that it's the only way to raise your cholesterol is by eating cholesterol. Fundamentally untrue. That is not that's a true statement. Saturated fat from your food will raise your cholesterol level. And we've known this as far back as the 1960s. There's actually a mathematical equation called the Hegstead equation, which literally can tell you for every, gram or 30 grams of, saturated fat that you consume, your cholesterol will increase by this many numbers, right? It's math. Long story short, when you eat a ketogenic diet, you get a significant amount of saturated fat and cholesterol. And as a result of that, people's LDL concentrations go up. So no matter what paper you're looking at in the ketogenic world, rising LDL concentrations is just a flat out game killer for me, right? You cannot have that. So that's problem number two. Number one, plateaued weight loss. Number two, high LDL cholesterol. And then number three, what a lot of people report back to us is that their A1C, which is the 3-month marker of blood glucose metabolism, comes down and it gets into the non-diabetic range of like 5.2, 5.5. Anything beneath 5.7 is considered good. And then at some point, all of a sudden, their A1C will start to creep back up into the pre-diabetes range between 5.7 and 6.4. And then before you know it, now it's higher than 6.5, and they're back in the world of type 2 diabetes. And they're like, I don't understand. I was doing it and it was working. And now my A1C all of a sudden is back at 7.4. What happened? Right? So at the root of it all, what ends up happening is that when you're eating a ketogenic diet, you end up becoming extremely insulin resistant. Okay. And insulin resistance is the name of the game. You guys have probably seen this. It's all over the internet now, right? It's all over Instagram and TikTok and whatnot. Everybody has the insulin resistance cure, the insulin resistance plan, right? And most of those insulin resistance plans are all about eating a low carbohydrate diet. And they tell you that insulin resistance is caused because your liver, your pancreas is making too much insulin because you're eating too many carbs. And so they mix up all of the biology and they say, eat less carbs, eat more meat. And as a result of that, you're going to reverse insulin resistance. That's what causes the problem in the first place. And so they're actually teaching people how to become more insulin resistant over the course of time. And as a result of becoming more insulin resistant, now you end up with other ancillary problems, including altered cardiovascular metabolism and a higher A1C value. Okay. So I'll stop talking here, but my point is that a ketogenic diet works in the short term, and it can become a significant problem into the future oftentimes all of those problems that are created in the future are still reversible for most people. So it's important to understand that you can still reverse it, but you have to get off of this low carbohydrate bandwagon in order to really understand that eating a low carbohydrate diet is not an effective long-term strategy, period, end of story.
What I want to tie in here, Nitin, and go ahead and jump in, is we started this by talking about how we're sacrificing our long-term health for short-term health, right? And what you just walked us through makes sense. It's like, I'm losing weight, my A1C is going down, my diabetes is going away. It's all working. And what this makes me really understand and appreciate now even more about your company, Cyrus Mastering Diabetes, is you guys could sell, correct me if I'm wrong, you could sell a 6-month course, but that's ketogenic focus that would get you possibly better results than you're getting your current clients. And you could sacrifice your long-term business, the long-term health of your clients, for short-term effects in both their waistline and your bank account.
Very good question. Nobody has ever asked me that before, and you are both right and slight modification. You're right in the sense that we could teach people how to eat a ketogenic diet so that I could put a lot of money into my bank account and they would get good short-term results in, call it the 6-month window. The one word that you used is they would get better results than if they ate a plant-based diet. And that's actually not true. They would get equivalent results if they ate a plant-based diet. They're just unaware that you can get those same results of body weight reduction, A1C reduction, fasting glucose reduction, improvement in cardiovascular, and reduction in LDL cholesterol within the first 6 months on a plant-based diet. You see what I'm saying?
And set yourself up for long-term health and wellness.
Bingo.
I love it.
Boom. Thank you for going into that. It was long, but it was so well worth it to understand sort of like what are the short-term and long-term trade-offs that people are making, to really keep that in mind as we experiment with these low-carb, high-fat diets that are like so popular. Everyone's talking about them all the time, and it's good to be able to now have that knowledge to say, hey, look, there are short-term benefits. Yes, you're experiencing those, but there's actually great, really high long-term detriments or things you're putting into play with this high level of unhealthy cholesterol that isn't going to actually help you, that could actually position you for, a potentially life-threatening disease.
Exactly right. And LDL cholesterol can actually spin out of control. So like before you develop a heart attack, let's just say your LDL concentrations rise today, right? I'm not saying that you're going to get a heart attack. Like you increase your risk for the development of heart attack down the road, right? That could be 3 years into the future. It could be 45 years into the future. It just depends on a number of different aspects of your overall health, right? But before the heart attack happens, you end up with many other cardiovascular abnormalities, including an increase in what's called atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of blood vessels. As these LDL particles end up increasing in the amount of cholesterol they're containing, they end up getting embedded into the walls of your blood vessels. They create these things called foam cells. The foam cells are extremely inflammatory. They can oxidize cholesterol in the walls of your arteries. Before you know it, now your arteries are no longer flexible. They're no longer able to pass nutrients properly. They can't pass oxygen to tissues. They can't receive oxygen back from tissues. It becomes a huge problem, right? So atherosclerosis starts, then that can lead to calcification of blood vessels. That can then increase your blood pressure, blah, 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 blah. Down the road now, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, why am I on a statin medication and multiple blood pressure medications, even though this ketogenic diet was supposed to be really good for me and it helped me in the first 6 months, right? That's what ends up happening.
Cyrus, can you talk about, I'm thinking is when I've put myself on a ketogenic diet before, and then it was okay, but when I tried to work out, it was like someone taking me to the hospital because I have no glycogen in my blood system. So can you talk about, because this is something you teach as well, can you talk about the importance of fitness when it comes to, long-term health and wellness, and also decreasing the risk of diabetes?
For sure. So fitness is, I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody asked me, they said, you know what, if you could do anything with your life and, you didn't have to work anymore and you could just, spend every single moment of your day doing whatever you wanted to do, what would it be? And my answer was, I was like, I would do two things. Number one, I would hang out with my wife and daughter. And then number two, I would go to the gym and I would work out for like 8 hours a day because that's like literally what I love to do. Like I am as much of a gym rat as I've ever been, and I freaking love every minute of it. Right. So
nothing has changed from when you and I, met each other a decade ago, and we were budding entrepreneurs, and all we would do is go to the YMCA and talk and dream about making businesses and helping people, and talking if we could make $5,000 a month to support ourselves as wellness professionals. Nothing's changed. You're the same guy, man. The same goofy guy. That's just
100%.
Loves working out and loves eating healthy.
That you got it. I mean, I remember those days when we were working out the YMCA like it was yesterday, honestly. I mean, that was like, what was that, like 2014?
Yeah.
2015?
Long time ago.
Yeah, man, it's like a decade ago. I remember a mutual friend, Katie, introduced me to you. She's like, oh yeah, I think you and Nick might get along with each other. And then when I met you, I was like, damn, this dude is like 6'30", and he's unbelievably strong, great athlete, and he's also like a yoga master. Like, I want to be best friends with this guy. And then when we started lifting weights, I was like, let's go to the gym, and I'm going to try and lift like maybe half as much as you and see if I can pull it off.
Oh, it was good times. I miss the days of being naive, and just that was it. Just a bunch of gym rats working on fitness, working on training people. But so that's in you. So how does it relate to long-term health of the things that the three of us all love? Fitness, moving our bodies. Tell us about that.
Okay, cool. So fitness to me is not only is it fun, not only a way to feel alive, not only a way is just enjoyable, but it is one of the most powerful tools that you have at your disposal to do what we said earlier, reverse insulin resistance. Okay. Now, insulin resistance, again, is like the central condition that increases your risk for so many other conditions, including, but not limited to, atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, fatty liver disease, chronic kidney disease, dementia, believe it or not. Insulin resistance inside of your body can translate to insulin resistance inside of your brain, which can set you up for dementia and Alzheimer's disease down the road. Okay. And then also things like peripheral neuropathy, which is nerve damage in your fingers and toes. And then also retinopathy, and in men, erectile dysfunction. So like nobody wants any of that stuff, right? So if you can just control the insulin resistance thing and you can reverse it, then you're decreasing your risk for all of those things simultaneously. So exercise is a very powerful insulin resistance reverser. Okay. Because what it does is it basically makes your muscle tissue so hungry for fuel that your muscle tissue starts to import glucose from your blood effectively for free. Okay. What do I mean by that? Okay. Under normal circumstances, like all three of us right now are just sitting at a desk and we're like standing in front of these microphones and we're just like looking at the camera, right? Okay. In this moment, we're not doing anything strenuous to any of our musculature. You're not forcing your biceps or your chest or your glutes or your quadriceps to do any work right now. We're just sitting. Okay. In this state right now, in order for glucose to get inside of any of those muscles, insulin has to be present. So insulin's job is to go knock, knock, knock. Hey, quadricep muscle cell, do you want some glucose? If you want that glucose, let me tell you about it. I'm going to signal to you that it's available, and then you can choose whether to take it up. So insulin goes to the knock, and goes to the cell door. It goes knock, knock. Hey, there's glucose in the blood. Do you want to take it up? And then the cell basically goes, okay, cool, sweet. Sounds like a plan. And it starts to import the glucose. Same thing happens in your liver. Same thing happens in your kidney. Same thing happens in your brain to a particular extent. But point being is that insulin has to be there in order to initiate that process, right? When you are exercising.
Sorry to interject. It's really interesting to hear you describe that, because every time in the past, when I've heard someone, because my dad has diabetes, every time I've heard someone talk about insulin, it's like, oh, insulin just exists to, lower your blood sugar, blood glucose, but never in the sense of there's also this relationship happening with your cells and your muscles, and how insulin is actually helping signal that glucose is available and then can be used. So I just wanted to highlight that for the audience. It's it's a different relationship to insulin versus just like, oh, is this just chemical that just lowers blood sugar?
Yes, exactly right. So I'm glad you brought that up, because most people vilify insulin. Most people who try and talk the game of diabetes and blood glucose control position insulin as being a threat. It is a bad guy. It is the thing that they refer to it as the fat storage hormone, right? Which is a true statement, but not its actual purpose. Okay. If we do just a quick side note here, insulin is not a bad guy. Insulin is required for life. Every single mammal on the planet, whether you are a dog or a monkey or a cat or a sheep or a cow or a human or a raccoon, every single mammal produces insulin, and every single mammal requires insulin for life. If I took a raccoon and I decreased its ability to manufacture insulin, that raccoon would die within a month. I could do the same thing to a cow and I could cripple its ability to make insulin. That cow would die within a month. Okay. So insulin is required and it's critical for life because, again, its purpose is to shuttle glucose into your into muscle and liver in particular. Okay. Now, the other way that your muscle tissue can can basically get glucose is because your muscle tissue and your liver tissue, both of them, store glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose. So that's what you had referred to earlier, Nick. Okay. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose that your muscles and liver are capable of building and keeping for long periods of time. So when you're exercising, you can basically either uptake glucose from the blood, or you can start to oxidize the glucose that's already been stored as glycogen and use both of those as a fuel source. So when you are exercising, again, the amount of insulin that's required in order to get that glucose into the tissue goes way down, way down. It's almost non-existent. And so very small amounts of insulin are required in order to get glucose in the tissue. And that's a good thing because you're effectively uptaking glucose for free, right? So when you eat a ketogenic diet, one of the things that can happen is that the amount of carbohydrate or the amount of glucose in your blood goes down significantly. Again, you're now relying more on these ketone bodies for your brain and actually for your muscle tissues. And so as a result of that, when you're eating food, you're not eating very many carbohydrate, grams of carbohydrate. And as a result of that, the ability to manufacture glycogen goes way down. So in other words, people who eat a ketogenic diet don't manufacture very much glycogen inside of their liver and inside of their muscle. Now, side note, glycogen is important for, number one, because you can rely on it for use during exercise, but also it's important because it is it's very what's called hygroscopic, meaning that it attracts a lot of water. So every mole of glycogen attracts 3 moles of water. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So when you manufacture glycogen, you end up actually just adding water weight to your muscles and to your liver. And that can add weight to you as a person. So when going back to what we were talking about earlier, you eat a ketogenic diet and all of a sudden now you lose weight. A lot of that weight loss right off the bat is literally just glycogen loss. Glycogen loss in your muscles translates to water loss. Water loss translates to weight loss. And that can be upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pounds, depending on how big you are to begin with, right? So the final thing I'll say here is that when you eat a ketogenic diet, because you're not manufacturing as much glycogen, you just don't have as much fuel on board your muscle tissue. So what that means is that when you go to actually work out, it's harder. It doesn't feel as easy. And a lot of people end up with these bonks and they're like, man, where's my energy level? How come I can't really I don't have any endurance anymore. And part of the reason is literally just because they don't have as much onboard fuel storage, and it can become a problem during exercise for sure. So, but that's what you experienced, right, Nick?
100%.
Yeah, and it sounds like we talk often about how do you create an awesome level of energy on a daily basis, right? So that one, of course, from all the health perspective, but also the work we're doing on a day-to-day basis, the missions that we're on. Often a lot of folks we talk to have very heavy schedules. There's a lot going on their plate and they're trying to work out. And I often hear, folks saying, man, I'm in back-to-back meetings all day, then I have no energy to work out. And so that's the thing that ends up getting thrown out. And oftentimes they're on these imbalanced diets, not really taking care of themselves. I mean, it could just even come down to simply not even eating lunch, not even taking the time to put anything into their body. So one of the things that's coming up is, now that we've talked a lot about the ketogenic diet, the downsides of it, and all the ways in which it could hurt you long term. Cyrus, what's your take on, from all the research you've done, all the work you've been doing with clients, what's a balanced diet? And does it vary by people? How should people think about the food they put into their body? How should people with different body types think about that as we're having this conversation? What's a path forward?
Okay. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, like my job, I'm not the food police. I'm not here to turn anyone into a vegan, but I do strongly recommend that people try and eat as many plants as possible. So the way that you would do that is by increasing your intake of fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains. Okay, so any kind of fruit. It doesn't matter whether it's berries or papayas, dates, bananas, oranges, apples, literally any fruit that you can think of, even the ones that are the quote unquote high glycemic fruits that everybody is trying to avoid. The pineapples, the watermelon, the bananas, right?
Mangoes.
There's like this mangoes. Yeah, you're from India. I'm from India. We're obsessed with mangoes, right? Right? That's like, you can't be Indian without being obsessed.
There's a mango fest in our house every summer.
Yeah, exactly right. You know what I'm talking about, right? So all fruits are fair game. And there's actually evidence that demonstrates that people who eat more fruit, as you increase your fruit intake, you actually become a healthier individual, right? But again, the message to the public is that fruits are bad for you. Fruits are going to make you fat. Fruits are going to make you diabetic. Fruits are going to increase your insulin production. So don't eat fruit, right? So
yeah, I used to hear that in my house. My dad being
but
diabetic.
feed your kids cereal for breakfast. That's fine. And then if you want, give it to them for dinner. But that'll work.
Right.
Yeah.
And lots of candy on Halloween.
Yeah,
too,
that'll be fine.
And any that's left over.
But don't eat fruit, because that's gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, fruit's really bad for you, but you should definitely have that market steak because that thing is good. How about that tri-tip? Yeah, go for it. That sounds great. Right. So, okay, fruit number 1, all shapes, all colors, all sizes, don't restrict. Number 2, vegetables, okay? Vegetables are probably the least sexy of all the like plant-based foods, right? When I say vegetables, most people are thinking like broccoli. Oh, I can't wait to eat my broccoli. Like, as far as I'm concerned, broccoli is boring, right? Broccoli is not fun. Neither are Brussels sprouts. Carrots suck. You know what I'm saying? But like, those foods are extremely nutrient dense and they have incredible metabolic power. So you have 2 types of vegetables. You got the non-starchy vegetables, which are the cauliflower, broccoli. I'll put tomatoes in that category, even though they're a fruit. Cucumbers, even though they're a fruit. Brussels sprouts. I'll put green leafy vegetables. Like, these are all foods that like have no starch component to them, right? Then you have the starchy vegetables, and these are the ones that are growing in the ground. Red potatoes, white potatoes, purple potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, squashes, okay? The stuff that grows either on the ground or in the ground. Pumpkins. Those are all starchy vegetables, and those are actually incredibly healthy for you as well because they're very nutrient dense as well, okay? So that's fruits, and then I'm going to put vegetables as category number 2. Third one, legumes. Beans, peas, lentils, okay? Any color of bean, any shape, any color, any size. Any color of pea, any shape, any color or size. Any kind of lentil. Red lentils, black lentils, yellow lentils, green lentils. I don't care. Just put lentils into your body, okay? So beans, peas, lentils are all 100% fair game. And then finally, the last category is intact whole grains. Whole grains are, I'm talking about like quinoa, brown rice, millet, barley, buckwheat. I'm not talking about Iron Kids bread. I'm not talking about Wheat Thins crackers, right?
Come on.
I know.
What am I supposed to eat, dude?
You're taking away all my fun, jerk. What's going on?
I thought you're not the food police.
Good one.
Gotcha.
So there's a distinct difference between the refined grains and the whole grains, and the refined grains are really the ones that we must avoid, because those are the ones that have a significant amount of research behind them that shows that they actually can worsen your glucose and increase fat deposition and add excess body weight and impair your cardiovascular metabolism. We don't want that. We want the whole grains. The difference between the refined and the whole grains is that the whole grain has maximal nutrient density. It is literally nothing has been stripped of the grain in the process of manufacturing and turning it into actual food. The refined grains end up, you take off the hull and you end up with just the endosperm on the inside. And the hull is where lots of the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and fiber is maintained. So when you get rid of that outer layer and you only end up with the endosperm, then you end up with just energy with very little nutrients. And that's not necessarily a good thing, right? So the overall philosophy here is eat as much food, like you said earlier, Nick, eat as much food from the ground as possible. Find the stuff either on the ground or on a bush or on a tree. Okay. That's the stuff that, contains more nutrients per bite than any other food on the planet. When I say nutrients, I mean vitamins, minerals, fiber, water, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. Those are the behind the scenes players that actually reverse biological dysfunctions. They decrease inflammation. They maximize the health of your liver and your brain and your kidney and your thyroid gland and beyond. And when you're eating a meat-based diet or a dairy-based diet, you just don't get very many of those behind the scenes players. And that becomes a problem over the course of thousands or tens of thousands of days. See what I'm saying? So ideal macronutrient intake, in my professional opinion, is somewhere about 70% carbohydrate and then about 15-15 for fat and protein. Or you could go as high as like 80% carbohydrate with 10 and 10 for fat and protein. So somewhere in that range, 70-15-15, 80-10-10, somewhere like there. And that's when you can get insulin resistance reversal, low A1C, low blood pressure, low LDL cholesterol, ideal body weight maintained over the course of time, and maximal nutrient intake.
This is super helpful. And there's something, I just want to add in here and this is again what I see almost daily with the nutrition work that I do at Tribe is the majority of people that come into my studio that are overweight, and the average person comes in at over 30% body fat. That's average. If someone comes in beneath 30, it's like, wow, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the state. I mean, 70% of the American public is overweight or obese. 70%. I think 1/3 of our kids are pre-diabetic. I mean, it comes from what we're putting into our body. I tell people all the time, I go, look, to some extent, fitness is the low-hanging fruit. You come in here and you exercise 3 times a week, that's a win. But nutrition, you got to make good nutrition choices 3 times a day. That's 7x the decisions, right, that really add up. And I see this all the time. The biggest things I see is people that are overweight. They don't eat breakfast, right? Everyone's intermittent fasting. That's the first thing. And Cyrus, I know you do that, I do that, but it's like this is a supplemental tool. It's not your go-to mechanism for health and wellness. They're intermittent fasting. They say, I eat pretty good. Yeah, tell me about your diet. They're under eating calories. That's another big one I see. And they're overeating processed foods. And it's like they may only be eating 1,200 calories a day, but they're getting almost no protein. And the majority of their food is processed carbohydrates and fat. And some of the best results we see are actually in our vegetarian Indian clients, almost every single time. Because they're going, and you guys know this, they're going from eating predominantly processed carbohydrates and fats, almost no protein, very low nutrient dense foods. It's like, hey, start to eat quinoa, start to eat rice and beans, start to eat, tofu, whatever, all these things. And their body, I literally see their body just be like, oh my God, nutrients. And the men and women, they'll lose 10 pounds, they'll gain 3 or 4 pounds of muscle in like 6 to 12 weeks. It's like, how is this possible? It's like, these are the effects of moving your body daily and feeding yourself well. And something you said to me, Cyrus, years ago that stuck with me. You said, I'll paraphrase, you said, I eat like a champion every day. And what I noticed between the 3 of us is even though we have different nutritions, we have different exercises, approaches, what do we all have in common? High levels of energy and focus and drive. So it's like, that stuck with me. Nathan, I know you have a ton of health practices. I do too as well, but it's like, look at the common thread. We're all coming at it from a different direction, different angle to some extent, but we're prioritizing movement, eating well, and being well, and having conversations and having a mission in life. And that's what I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
We're all doing it slightly differently, but we're in the same direction. And it's like, it's not that hard. It's actually pretty simple. It doesn't mean it's easy. I want to be clear on that, but it's pretty simple. Eat well, move well, and think well.
And high quality foods, like we're putting as much as possible. I mean, I'm the guy who who started reading a lot of labels. I never used to, but I think over the last 5-7 years, I would look at things and say, okay, there's 2 brands of whatever, even some of the processed food. And I would say, okay, well, which one has the shortest list of ingredients and doesn't have all these crazy other additives? So even if I do want to pick up something that isn't maybe in the, quote unquote, unhealthy category, at least I'm not going to the absolute worst. And I noticed this even with recently looking at bread, simple as bread. Some of the cheapest whole grain, whole wheat bread that was like $3. It had the list of ingredients was like 50 plus. And then I look at the bread that is, $5-6, and you notice the list of ingredients shrinks dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, like, okay, no wonder they're adding in all these preservatives to keep the bread on the shelf longer and making it cheaper. But you're sacrificing that by putting all this stuff in your body. I just want to share one story. Like, all this conversation reminded me of the time when there was a time when I used to work in McDonald's as a teenager, and I was eating McDonald's like every single day, maybe once or twice a day. And there came a time I fell sick. I had fever, didn't have much energy. My doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And when he asked me what I ate and I told him I was like eating McDonald's twice a day, he just had me quit McDonald's for a week. So just no fast food for a week. And I was back to perfect. Full energy, no issues, none of that. So fast food, I mean, yes, people eat it. I eat it too from once in a while, but it is highly, highly detrimental to our health.
100%. I think you guys have brought up actually a number of good points here, which is that like low quality food leads to low quality health. That's the sort of thing that I tell myself in my head every single time I'm about to open my mouth. Right. And, I'm human and I eat tortilla chips every once in a while, and I'll have some bread once in a while, and like, whatever, it's not that big a deal, But every time I do it, and then if I get some kind of like high blood glucose afterwards, or if I like don't feel like low energy, or I got a headache or something, I'm just like, come on, Cyrus, that was a low energy, that was a low quality decision. Like you can make a better decision next time. And if you do, you're likely to feel better and you're likely to get better results, right? That's number one. And then number two, question for you, Nick. If a client comes up to you and basically says, presents exactly what you described, and they're not eating breakfast because they're quote unquote intermittent fasting because they found it on TikTok and everybody else is doing it and it looks like a cool thing to do, and they're not eating enough calories and they're 30 pounds overweight and they have a 30% body fat, okay? Give me an idea. What is your prescription for that type of individual? Yeah. How do you think about changing them so that they can get, the results they're looking for?
It's interesting because prescription is probably the exact word I would use, right? And now it varies between each person depending on their goals. But let's say in general, let's say a woman comes in, she's 35, she's 30 years old, she's 5'5", she's 35% body fat, which means she's got 60 or 70 pounds of body fat and she's got 40 or 50 pounds of muscle, right? And it's like, okay, let's take a look at the stats here. No wonder you're tired. You have more fat on your body than muscle. You're dragging around a toddler in extra body weight, right? You're not moving, right? You're not eating well. You're not hydrating. You're working at a desk all day long. So it's like, oh, look, okay, let's take a look at two different things. Let's look at exercise and let's look at nutrition. For exercise, I think there's three basic levers to pull. The first one is frequency. Are you exercising and moving your body intentionally 3 times a week minimum? And I would say that's 3 times a week of strength training, weight training, or high intensity training. That's not counting going for a walk or a hike or doing some yoga. 3 times a week of strength training. Why? So what you can do, what Cyrus talked about, is break down your muscle tissues, right? Increase your metabolism, get into some oxygen debt, right? Get your metabolism working. And then people go, "Why? I'm not hungry." Well, I go, watch. I promise you, if you start working out 3 days a week for 45 minutes and you start lifting weights, you're going to start coming to me and be like, "Nick, I'm starving. I need to eat my arm off." And it's exactly what Cyrus explained, right? So I'm doing it without the science back. I'm just going, this is what I feel. Cyrus gave us the info. And then I go, okay, now look, now what you do is you've broken down your muscle tissues. You haven't built them when you're exercising, by the way. You've broken them down. Now you've got a 90-minute window where your body's like, give me the food. So now you go home and we teach you, okay, here's what to eat, here's how to eat, and here's when to eat it, right? And predominantly it's like eat clean food, get your protein up, reduce your processed carbohydrates, right? Reduce your fats big time for sure. That's one of the biggest things I see. And then your body's going to go, wow, this feels great. Okay. And then sleep. And then it becomes a system. Exercise, eat well, sleep well. And Cyrus, what you said is like a low quality food leads to low quality health. I would say that leads to a low quality life. And if you flip that, if you start to exercise, you will eat better, you will feel better, you will sleep better. And all of a sudden you're like, how come my life is better? How come my friendships are better? Why do I have more confidence? Why am I in a better mood? Why are people noticing that I'm making changes? It's like, because you're working on yourself. You're prioritizing your health and wellness. I would say you are making your health and wellness happen. No one else is going to do it for you, by the way. No one's going to eat for you, maybe unless you're a millionaire. I don't know. But no one's going to eat for you. No one's going to exercise you. But honestly, what I want to repeat is it's simple. Exercise more often than not. Eat healthy more often than not. But the hard part is doing it, right? The hard part is making the choices, making the decisions. But what I do find is, and I think you guys do too, is after a while, at first, like banana or cookie. I don't know. After a while, there isn't a conversation. There isn't even a thought in the mind. It simply goes, this is what I eat. And once you get to that space, now you don't have to think about eating. Now you don't have to think about exercise. It's like they become part of your identity and who you are and what you do. If you get to that space, then it's like, oh yeah, I go to the gym. I eat well. Sometimes I don't. So that's kind of, in general, Cyrus, that's the prescription. And usually within 6 weeks of people starting at my gym, and this is especially people going from nothing to something, they will lose 10 to 15 pounds of body fat and they will gain 2 to 3 pounds of muscle. And they will look at me or my trainers and go, is the scale broken? I swear to God, is the scale broken? It's like, no, the scale isn't biased. The scale is not on the payroll, guys. And they go, what happened? Well, you exercised and you ate well. I swear to God, they go, it can't be this easy. This can't be it. It is. We can get as much in the weeds as we want into all the science, and we can battle over keto and vegan and and CrossFit versus
basics,
whatever. But let's just say the basics work. So
yeah, it's not rocket science. The basics work, and that they're actually changing their body composition, aka losing fat and gaining muscle. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you use one of those in-body scanners that actually measures lean body mass and fat mass together, correct?
Because people will freak out. Oh, this isn't working. Hold on, let me take a look. This doesn't make sense. You're eating better. You're exercising. There's no way you haven't lost body fat. Nick, the scale didn't move. What's your body fat percentage? Well, it was at 29. What's it at now? It's at 26%. Okay, you just lost 8 pounds of body fat and you gained 3 pounds of muscle. That's why the scale only moved a couple pounds. And they're like,
correct.
So like, what? So that's exactly why we use an in-body scale, is for that exact reason.
That's brilliant. That's the right way to do it. So I love what you just said here, actually, because nothing that we're talking about is actually rocket science. Like, there's far harder problems that humans have had to like tackle and solve, like space travel and inventing the internet and beyond. Like, those things are like real problems that we have to figure out. When it comes to like moving your body and doing some strength training and like not eating like a jerk, like these things are not that complicated. You just have to like put it into motion and then build upon a small habit today. And then it starts to compound over the course of time. And when you do it that way, it makes tremendous difference in the way that you look and feel over the course of 3 to 6 to 12 to 24 months. It happens every single time. And I'm so glad to hear you say that.
And I would, the last thing I would throw in there is, and surround yourself with other people who are doing that. If you show me your community, I will show you your future. That's one of my new favorite lines.
Oh, I like it. Truth be told, I don't think I've ever verbalized this, but I'll say this, and I do mean this with every ounce of my being. Part of the reason why I wanted to be friends with you way back in the day when we first met each other, and part of the reason why I wanted to work out with you in particular, because I was like, damn, this guy's going to make me better. He's way stronger than me. He knows so much about spirituality and yoga and, meditative practices. I don't know anything about that stuff. If we become friends with each other, I will, through, osmosis, I will start to absorb all of that knowledge and all of that opportunity. And, it's translated to me being, 10 years down the road, and I'm still a fraction of the man that you are, but, it works, right? Surround yourself with people who are better than you, and you'll just become better, period, end of story.
in your podcast right up to us, you said, only if I could be half as good as Nick. So
Yeah, I'm trying. One day I know I'll be there.
Yeah. Cyrus is full of it, by the way, guys. I've been following Cyrus's blueprint for me in terms of business for the last 10 years. He's my secret business coach. Let's not let him fool you at all. Cyrus, how come you're 10 steps ahead of us at all times? Well, he's got a PhD, guys. He's a little smarter than we are.
I just know how to use Google. Let's be honest.
That's funny. That's great.
Time out real quick. I have to be on a phone call in like 3 minutes with like a sales call. So do you guys want me to push that sales call back, or do you want to end this one?
We can stop now.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, with that, guys, it's been super fun. Cyrus, thanks so much for being on the show. Nathan, appreciate your presence as always, your in-depth questions, and your ability to like take everything we're talking about and put it into something we can all understand. Cyrus, any last words and any way people can get in touch with you and do some work with you if they need some help, or if they have a family member that needs some help?
For sure. Thank you for saying that. So we basically have the bread and butter at Mastering Diabetes and Mastering Weight Loss are coaching programs. We hold your hand to get from point A to point B. So, you look at yourself in the mirror today and you're like, well, my A1C is high and I'm living with prediabetes and I'm 14 pounds overweight and my LDL concentration is high and blah, 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 blah. That's right. So you identify what your problems are, and we can basically create a path to sustainable health lifestyle transformation. And we guarantee, unlike any other coaching program that I've ever seen on the interwebs, we guarantee lifestyle change. We guarantee, we create personalized guarantees for every single person that comes through the door. And we determine what is capable over the course of a 6 to 12 month period. And we create that guarantee with you. And we say, we will help you lower your A1C by 2% or lose, 27 pounds. And we guarantee that it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen for any reason, we'll coach you for free until it does. Okay. Mm-hmm. We have a 96% success rate on our coaching programs because we do not mess around. Long story short, if you are looking for, if you or a family member or a friend wants some help and wants to help, get a best friend who can guide you through this process and make sure that you are getting the most out of your life and improving your health in the process, visit masteringdiabetes.org or masteringweightloss.org, and we will help you out. No questions asked.
Perfect. All right. Well, Cyrus, thanks so much for being on. Appreciate your time and your thoughts and your wisdom. And we'll have you on again. We could have kept going forever.
Agreed. 100%. Thank you for having me here today. It was fantastic. And I can't wait to hear the final product. You guys are awesome. Thanks again.
You got it.
Thank you.